Let's say you're walking down a typical street in Anytown, Ohio. Then suddenly out of nowhere, bam! This guy wants your phone. What do? You run, of course, and leave the phone behind. But had you known where the most dangerous places in Ohio were, you might have picked a different place to visit. Our goal today is to highlight the most dangerous cities in Ohio. How'd we do it? We looked at the last 3 years of FBI reporting data for cities over 10,000 residents. And we broke the numbers down into your statistical chances of being the victim of a violent or property crime. Now grab your shotgun and your pepper spray as we get started. Our first stop along our most dangerous journey through the Buckeye State starts in, not surprisingly, East Cleveland. The 7th most violent place in the state is sketchy all over town, even 1 block away from highway exits. In fact, in some parts of East Cleveland, you better carry a weapon. Unless you wanted to buy some meth, crack, or heroin, then you'd fit right in. So yeah, East Cleveland's bad, but not that bad. After all, 20% of US cities are more dangerous, and East Cleveland's only 3 times as bad as the national average. Next up on our Danger Zone tour of the Buckeye State brings us to Dayton. Now, if you talk to Dayton residents, lots of them will claim they should be atop this list. If you spent a year in Dayton, you'd have a 1 in 17 chance of being the victim of a property crime. And that's even higher if you hang out in town west of 75, especially on West 3rd Street. Yikes. But hey, there's lots of hospitals in town, so if you get shot, at least you'll have a short drive. Then when you get out, hopefully you can ID the suspect. He shouldn't be too hard to pick out. Canton was closer to the top 5 as little as 3 years ago, but crime is actually down a little bit here. But it's still the 3rd most violent place in the state, where you would have about a 1 in 100 chance of being the victim of an attack or murder for every year you lived here. Forget mowing lawns, you could make some extra money after school selling bullets in Canton. There were 730 violent crimes in Canton last year. For perspective, Cleveland suburb Brecksville has about 1/6 the population Canton does, and they had 0 violent crimes last year. Mansfield, Ohio might not be as violent as Canton, but this Richfield County city that's halfway between Columbus and Cleveland is in the top 5 for robberies every year. Just look at the Mansfield police blotter. The thing is filled with every juicy detail that has anything to do with robberies and thefts in town. That brand new Mazda Miata? Better lock it up. Your favorite New Kids on the Block posters? Gone. Seems like the punks in Mansfield will pretty much walk away with anything that's not locked down. Cincinnati is Ohio's 3rd largest city, so there's no surprise that this is one of the most dangerous places in the state. Cincinnati saw 60 murders and nearly 3,000 violent crimes last year. These places in light blue and white are really bad areas. Only 3% of all cities in the nation are safer than Cincinnati, and it's about 4 times more dangerous than the average American city. You have about a 1 in 18 chance of being the victim of a property crime when you're in Cincinnati for a year. On the bright side, since there's so many people in prison in this part of the state, at least the lines at Skyline are probably a lot shorter than ever. This video is brought to you by Phil's Guns in Lima, Ohio. Look, crime is higher than ever, and everyone needs to be protected. Whether you've never owned a gun before, you already own several weapons, or even if Dad just left and you're the man of the house now, we'll help you find the gun that's right for you. Protect yourself from intruders. Protect yourself from them. Continuing our dangerous look at Ohio, we come to Whitehall, an eastern Columbus suburb. Crime is really bad here, especially at the Commons at Royal Landing apartment complex. You have about a 1 in 16 chance of being the victim of some type of crime in Whitehall. The good news? Whitehall just brought in a new police chief, and the citizens here are banding together to find an end to the crime. So at least things might start to improve here. Smack dab in the middle of Cincinnati and Dayton is Middletown. This medium-sized city may not be as notoriously violent as other cities in Ohio, but when you look at the numbers, it's clear this place needs some tough love. Middletown only saw 2 murders, which is far less than Cleveland, but the stats say that only 1% of other cities in the nation are more dangerous than Middletown. Ladies, it's too bad that in Middletown, these aren't the kind of guys following you out to the car. No, it's these kind of guys. Gonna take a highway to the danger zone. Welcome to Toledo, the 3rd most dangerous place in the state of Ohio. What makes T-Town such an unsafe place to live? Toledo is the 2nd most violent place in the entire state statistically. There were 24 murders here last year, and you'd have about a 1 in 156 chance of being raped, attacked, or murdered yourself if you spent a year here. There were also 16,000 property crimes here, meaning that every day in Toledo, 43 people are robbed or otherwise impacted by theft or vandalism. Way back in 2004, Springfield was an all-American city, but things have certainly gone downhill since. If you want to see a real mess, head over to this city of 60,000 people just outside of Dayton. Crime is up 21% in Springfield, and the violent crime reached a 14-year high last year. Folks have about a 1 in 13 chance of being the victim of a property crime. In comparison, in places like Upper Arlington, the chance of being the victim is 6 times less likely. Ah, Upper Arlington. Jack and Jill went to Cleveland to try to buy some crack. Jack got shot and Jill got mugged. You can bet they won't be back. Cleveland was the murder capital of Ohio last year, with a grand total of 120 deaths. And that doesn't even include killings that were deemed in self-defense, or killings by the police department. It was the worst year in a decade for this city that had made some strides to curb all the senseless killings. And things are on pace this year to get close to that number again, so they're in for another long year. If you live in Cleveland or any of the other cities we mentioned, you live in a really dangerous place. And if you don't live in any of these cities, you can rest a lot easier at night. Congratulations.